Hello and welcome to our presentation on spatial sound art in public spaces. I'm Catherine Guastavino from McGill University and Kermit, and I will be presenting today with Valérian Fraisse, as well as Maryse Lavoie from Ville de Montréal, on behalf of all the co-authors, including Simone D'Ambrosio and Etienne Legast from Audiotopie. The research presented today was conducted as part of the Sounds in the City partnership. This is a research partnership funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada that brings together academic researchers and practitioners from the public sector and private sector to rethink the role of sound in urban spaces. For today's work, we will be focusing on a collaboration between one of the boroughs of the Ville de Montréal, l'arrondissement du Plateau Mont-Royal, researchers from McGill University and Kermit, and sound artists from Audiotopie. So the Sounds in the City partnership brings together citizens, academic researchers, and various professionals that we will call city makers, including professionals of the built environment and sound artists, as well as municipal governments to try and make our cities sound better. We will describe this collaboration in the context of the design and evaluation of a new public square in the vibrant neighborhood of Plateau Mont-Royal in downtown Montreal. So this collaboration included landscape design, sound design, and soundscape evaluation. And I would like to emphasize the two-way interactions between the research team, the sound artists, and the City of Montreal, which allowed us to look at urban sound from a resource-oriented perspective, supporting the holistic experience of public space users. The new public square is called the Place Fleur de Macadam. It started with a fairly extensive consultation process to citizens to see what they wanted to get out of this space that used to be a vacant plot. It then gave rise to 4 temporary designs, which will lead to a permanent design later this year. And so multiple stakeholders were involved, including obviously the Plateau Mont-Royal, the Ville de Montréal borough, but also the Sounds in the City research team and sound artists from Audiotopie, as well as the design firm, the Castor et Pollux. The approach was very innovative in that it was almost experimental with these temporary designs that allowed us to experiment with various sound installations and to see how they could be used to enhance the experience of public space users. This is what the vacant lot looked like a few years ago. And this is what the new public square now looks like. And I will now turn to Valérian, who will tell us about how we got there and how the sound considerations were integrated in the design and evaluation process.
Hello everyone. To begin, I'm going to talk about the first phase of the project, which happened in 2018 and which was the first phase of the experiment. For the course of the spring and summer 2018, the landscape company Castor et Pollux answered for a call for projects in which they were asked to create several landscape designs that had various purposes. Here you can see the 3 designs that were effective during this period. We're only going to focus on the 2 latter, design 1 and 2, that respectively had purposes of relaxation and culture. In both landscape design, the company Audiotopie was asked to create 2 sound installations that were associated to those 2 purposes. To correspond to those purposes, the company Audiotopie decided to have 2 compositional approaches. In the first one, it was decided to have a backgrounded compositional approach in which the sonic content was designed to fit in, to blend with the existing sound and to kind of merge with the surrounding sound environment. In the second installation, it was decided to have a more oppositional sound design in which the sound installation clearly distincts itself from the surrounding sound environment. The overall goal of the 2 sound installations was to enhance the experience of the public space users by reinforcing the purposes of the spaces. Here you can see an overview of the first design dedicated to relaxation. As you can see, there were a lot of benches and places to rest and sit. Composed by Lou Duchemin-Enquête, the first sound installation was intended to have a naturalistic theme. It consisted in 4 independent loops played on each speaker and of 2 sound layers. The first layer consisted in natural sound elements such as birds and insects, whereas the second one consisted in musical elements such as percussive and melodic content. It is important to remind that this sound installation and all sound installation in the project had a relatively low level compared to the surrounding sound environment, and also a sparse content. This is due for the need of non-disruptivity, since the installations are displaying sound throughout entire days for weeks or even months. The video I'm going to present you is a teaser of the first sound installation made by Audiotopy. And here is an overview of the second design that was more oriented toward culture and social interactions. The second composition, composed by Etienne Legast, was intended to belong to a cultural theme. It consisted on synchronized tracks, in opposite to the previous installation, that contain again 2 sound layers. The first layer consisted in speech sounds, whereas the second one, that were more backgrounded, consisted in music and urban elements. Here we can see one of the loudspeakers designed by Audiotopy, called Essaim. Each of those loudspeakers consisted on a speaker, an amplifier, and a playback system on a chip, embedded inside an ABS tube, serving as a buffer here. The speakers are designed to play original composition over long time frames, since they are supposed to stay outside for months. In order to evaluate the soundscape on the Florida Macadam Square and also the potential impact of the sound installation on the sound environment as it is perceived by its user, the Sounds in the City team deployed several questionnaires on cite, including both open and closed-ended questions, and both English or in French. The open-ended question included questions about the activity, what brings you here today, but also question about the sound source that they perceived. So we asked them to list the sounds that they hear and to class them as being either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. In addition, we also deployed a Likert scale to evaluate the soundscape quality. Those scales were from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree and included several dimensions of the soundscape. Those Likert scales showed us that both installations had a positive impact on soundscape evaluation. First, they both decreased the perception of sound level. In addition, they both increased the sensation of calm. Finally, while the first installation increased the sensation of respite, the second one increased the soundscape dimension of pleasant. What is the take-home message from 2018? Well, first, both installations had a very positive effect on the perception of the sound environment. In addition, it seems that different compositions may lead to different influences on soundscape quality. For example, and as I explained, both compositions had the same average influence on the perception of sound level and the notion of calm. However, the first one had a positive influence on respite, whereas the second one had an influence on pleasantness. Finally, a study of the activities performed in the square also showed us that there is an evolution of the uses of the public space depending on the time of the day. And this is a useful hint for the next phase of the experiment, because we can expect that users that perform different activities on the square have different expectations for their soundscape. Now I'm going to talk to you about the second phase of the experiment, which happened in 2019. So this collaboration has been made with exactly the same stakeholders, including Sounds in the City, Audiotopy, and the City of Montreal. And it also has been informed by the previous year collaboration. For example, we had the occasion to study the activity performed in the square in the previous year. In addition, we had a new landscape design by the same company, Castor et Pollux. And this time we evaluated 2 spatial compositions, including not 4 but 8 speakers. Finally, we also set up some measurements of sound level. Here we can see the layout of the Fleur de Macadam Square for the 2019 session. The landscape designers took advantage of the 3 previous designs in 2018 by taking what was most appreciated by space users. This park layout also combined the 2 functions of the previous designs in 2018, namely a function of relaxation and a function of social interaction. In addition, the fact that the installation combined 8 speakers this time allowed to setting up trajectory regarding the space. Here, the speaker's layout is thought in regard with a user trajectory across a diagonal of the space from here to here. In order to see trends regarding the sound level and the space, we took measurements from May to August 2019. So we placed a sound level monitor on this side of the square, and we capture the equivalent level with a ponderation every second. Those measurements allowed us to capture trends regarding sound level on the Fleur de Macadam Square. As you can see here, we have slightly different trends throughout the days of the week. For example, during weekdays, you can observe that rush hour between 7 and 8 a.m. and that then the sound level slightly decreases until night. At the opposite during weekend, we don't really observe that rush hour, but instead that the sound level slightly increases until what can be thought of peak of activity at around 6, and then that it decreases. The only common trend between weekday and weekends is actually that the level slightly decreases from, say, 6-7 p.m. Consequently, the only recommendation we gave to the composer regarding sound level was to decrease the installation level by 3 decibels from 7 p.m. We tried this year to reiterate this dichotomy we have between a more oppositional composition that kind of distinguishes itself from the sound environment and a more backgrounded installation that kind of merged with the actual sound environment. Both installations consisted in several time slots and a combination of several sound contents. They were played in loops that were repeated throughout the day in function of the time slot, and each loop for each speaker had different length. which would result in contents that evolved throughout the day. It is important to remind that both installations had a density that evolved throughout the day, and this was based on recommendation we made to the composer resulting from the analysis of the activity performed in the square in 2018. Now I'm going to present you a sound excerpt for each of the composition. Here is the first. And here is the second installation. We also had the occasion to perform some early experiments on the speaker's position by using the ambisonic lab on the picture here. This allowed us, using pre-recorded soundscape from the public square, to have an overview of how the installation could sound like regarding the disposition of the speakers. This allowed us to adjust the relative levels of the sound installation of the speakers. Here we can see an overview of the Fleur de Macadam square and of the sound installation. We can see here each of the speakers, for example here or here. Now I'm going to talk to you about the results we had from the questionnaire regarding both sound installation. If we look at the Likert scale, we can observe a strong impact of the sound installation on a lot of soundscape scale, including pleasant, calm, coherent, chaotic, respite, ease, and loudness. Please note that here we only see the result for the first oppositional composition, but the second, more backgrounded composition had similar results, except for ease and respite. I didn't mention it before, but there were also construction work around the space of the square during the time in which the installation was on. And this adds significant noise to the sound environment. But despite this unusual sound environment, we can observe that the sound installation still had a very positive impact on soundscape, which is very encouraging.
To summarize the main findings from the questionnaire study, we were able to show that the presence of sound installations can be used to enhance the experience of public space users. So with all 4 installations, despite the fact that we're adding sound to an existing soundscape, users of the space found the space to be less loud. So we're able to lower the perceived loudness or the negative effects of the loudness. And we were also able to show that they perceived the space as being calmer in the presence of the sound installation and as having more potential for respite. So we believe that this has a lot of potential to inform the design of more restorative spaces. And in that sense, sound art can really shape urban soundscapes. I will now turn over to Maryse Lavoie from Ville de Montréal, who will tell us or reflect on this intersectorial collaboration.
So to make our cities sound better, we first need to bring sound to the design table and to consider sound in the very beginning of a project. We need to conduct original soundscape research that informs planning and design. Similar process should be considered for other sites, such as pedestrian zones, in order to be able to do comparisons of different context, experiment sounds in different situations. Iterative process needs to be put in place to inform permanent design and future interventions as well. But that requires very close collaboration between all stakeholders in order to ensure knowledge continuity. We need to support lasting changes through strong relationships with the city. And inside the city itself, it requires integration across different departments. In the Fleur de Macadam projects, it first started with Division des Permis et Inspection, but most of the collaboration work was done with Division de l'Aménagement écologique du paysage. Participation of Direction des Travaux Publics was also important, as well as integration of Direction de la Culture, des Sports, des Loisirs et du Développement social for the continuity of sound art installations. In the end, integrating soundscape in the process of planning and design of a new public space brings together a lot of different sectors. Through collaboration and coordination, sound can be considered as an opportunity to reinforce spatial design and perceptual experience of public spaces.
Thank you everyone for listening. We would like to add a special thanks to all the collaborators that helped this project to be realized.